This is the Impressions Xchange podcast.
Impressions Xchange podcast,
where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Roberts, the host of the Impressions Xchange podcast series. It's June, which means it is Pride Month, a time when we not only celebrate and honor the LGBTQIA+ rights movement and overall community, but it's a time when we can and should reflect on diversity and inclusion within our industry. That's why on this episode, I have two very special guests with me. First up, I'll be speaking with Josh Carruth, Managing Director, Decorated Apparel at Printing United Alliance. We will be discussing how he initially became aware of what is now known as U.N.I.T.E together, as well as why it's so important for something like this initiative to have a presence at a physical event like a trade show. Later in the episode, I'll be joined by Ross Hunter, president of ROQ US, about the history behind the U.N.I.T.E Together initiative, why it's so important, and how those in the printing industry can get involved. Hey, Josh, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Ashley. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so as you know, I am speaking with Ross Hunter later in this episode, and we talked a lot about U.N.I.T.E Together and kind of the history of the initiative and the importance of it and how the industry can get involved. So, I was happy to have you on the episode today to talk about that as well. And how did you get involved with U.N.I.T.E Together? How did you become aware of it?
Well, it was, I guess I'd say it was in 2020. And I think some of the precipice for what at the time was called ROQ Together. It was something that ROQ was doing internally in the wake of, George Floyd murder and everything that was going on in the country. They, as a company, decided they wanted to dedicate some time and energy to educating and, making a safe space for their staff members. And that quickly grew to like, hey, this is an idea that we could probably, share, and others would want to do it. And I've known Ross for several years, so he reached out to me and said, hey, what are kind of the odds of this being something that you would want to be a part of from an organizational standpoint? And I was in a different role at the time, but I think the intent is I was still within an industry and event, and how does an event play a role in this? Just like other manufacturers would play a role, other printers would play a role, and how can we just get a conversation going? And there were a few of us that were like, yeah, absolutely. So we kind of joined that initial board to help do whatever we could, really. You know what I mean? It's not like we had any kind of expertise or that I brought anything special to the table other than, an open mind or an open heart that we should all have. So that's where the conversation started. Essentially, a small board was born to talk about what we can do, whether it was just sharing the stories that printers had encountered in their day-to-day business, whether it was at an industry event or not. But, industry events are the social destination highlights for a community throughout the year. So these stories often manifested themselves while they were at an industry event. You're talking about screen printing in particular, right? And let's, use the case for a female business owner, which historically speaking in the, decorated apparel, and I'm assuming quite the print industry, it's a male dominated industry. And a lot of female business owners would go to events and absolutely feel that firsthand and be like, they wouldn't talk to me. Like they didn't realize. And like my partner that I was there with was flat out saying, it's her money. She's looking to buy the machine. And they almost like didn't even acknowledge that just because they're so trained or used to it or biased to whatever the reason is. There was not that, welcoming feeling coming from some of the larger manufacturers in the space. And so stories like that, right, start to build up and go, wow, okay, so why are events important here? Because this stuff is happening at events. Why is it important to have a representation of a movement or a group like this at a show? It's so that there is that that shoulder to lean on there, a place to go and feel safe, a place to know you go where you know you're included, whether that's, race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it might be. The stories were very similar in that because I am X, I was treated a certain way, not a good way, right? That's the idea. So having a place, a home base, or a camp at a show was a way to provide a space where people know they were inclusive. And everything kind of originally was born from like the use of the logo. One of the early ideas was there's a really great logo they came up with that was very identifiable, very recognizable. And the idea was that if you had, pledged to be part of this kind of idea or to do better, then you kind of display this logo so that people know at a glance when they're walking into somewhere, like, I can probably go there and feel like I'm talking with like-minded individuals. We likened it to like when you go into the like the convenience store and they have like the American Express and Visa, things on the door. You can use your card, right? You don't have to have cash. That was the goal, to make it that recognizable and to spread it throughout the industry, where each person took it and made it their own, so that there was something being done. It has to start somewhere, right? There's always the pebble in the middle of the snowball. So that's where events come in and why it's so important, because these are the places where those things go down, right? And that's where it happens. And it's not only important to make sure that is a safe space, but that's the one that we can control. And that's the one we have the responsibility to make sure all of our attendees, and I'm not speaking from like a Printing United Expo standpoint here. I'm talking about just industry events. We all have that responsibility. So, currently there are multiple events represented at the board level with U.N.I.T.E together. It's not like an exclusive type of thing, because it shouldn't be. There's nothing to gain from it, except that people think they can feel safe when they come to your event, and that it's not just going to be the good old boys club, so to speak.
Right.
So does that answer your question? Sorry.
It does.
I'm a little long-winded sometimes.
No, that was great. That was great. That really kind of set the stage. And I think it's, spot on, the fact that, I'm kind of newer to the industry. I've only been working in it for less than 7 years. But we did a whole series with women back in March for our Women's History Month podcast series. And we heard time and time again stories like that, specifically with women of, kind of feeling like the outsider in the industry. So I think something like this is really, it was really needed and really important. And then, something else that you mentioned, Printing United Expo. So obviously that is coming in October in Vegas. And I heard that there'll be a presence of U.N.I.T.E together there. So can you kind of talk about that? You talked about the importance of it being at events. So what is going to happen at Printing United Expo with U.N.I.T.E together?
So there's be a dedicated booth space. So we're worked on the board, and that's something that, we talk about doing actionable things, right? And Jed from States Manufacturing is also on that board, and he brought up some good points in our meeting, like, hey, let's not talk lofty goals. Like, let's break this down into like, hey, next time we meet, we're going to all have had some homework done, and what can we bring to the table, and what plans can we do? So the first thing that we were able to bring to the table is, yeah, of course we're gonna give you space for this. We're gonna give space to us for this. It's not even like a them and us thing. It's, we're part of that kind of group, and we want to make sure it is. And our team was totally on board with it. So we will, carve out some space, and for this time it will probably be situated where the critical mass of the apparel folks are, but it's really open to everybody. The idea is that it can spread, and that they're, whether it's different groups or it's the same group, that's immaterial. It's about the idea, and people actually doing things like what Jed is doing, like what ROQ US did with their internal company. And there's going to be flack about it. Not everybody was stoked about it because they think it's a political statement, and it's not. It's not at all. There's nothing wrong with saying that everybody should feel like they matter. Like, and I'm not saying that everybody's special and important. I'm not even going that far. It's just that, you don't need to question the validity or the merit of your thoughts and ideas based on anything but the validity of merit of the idea. And it shouldn't come in that, oh, is it because I'm a woman he didn't listen to me? Is it because I'm Black they didn't listen to me? Oh, whatever it might be. That's the part I think you can take away from the political side. So we're going to dedicate some space where that's just it. People can come and share stories. They can connect with other printer members who are there, who have their own kind of ideas and groups going on. Print Girl Mafia is one that comes to mind, who's been a great supporter of this and out there in their communities, not even at the industry events, pushing for this type of behavior. We'd love to have those groups. It's a place they can call home. While they're walking around, they're doing their business, they're having their show. If they want to go sit down somewhere and chat, or be a shoulder to lean on, or share their story, that's the idea of the space. It'll be furnished with couches and things like that, and there'll be a happy hour. That's all going to be taken care of. ROQ is going to help with that portion of it. That's something they're committed to until this kind of grows into its own self-sustaining thing. But I also think there'll be some other industry partners who have shown some interest, where you're going to have like competitors in the same space for the right reason. Which anytime you can do that, I think that's a great thing to happen. And then, some of our educational content, while I think U.N.I.T.E together will have an opportunity to be represented on some of those panel discussions and things like that, because I do think there's some importance in talking about this with regards to the future of our industry. Who are the business owners going to be? Who is the community actually inclusive of? Who does, what does that mean? And this topic is definitely something that can fit into that kind of content schedule and be relevant and be valuable to those who are able to consume it, at the show or after or whatever.
Totally. And I was actually going to bring that up. The fact that it's something that we talk about on the, commercial packaging side, and I'm sure the apparel side as well. It's the next generation who's going to be taking over these businesses. How do we get people to, unfortunately, there's that thought that print is dead, which we know it's not. But getting the next generation to be excited about our industry and join our industry, I think, initiatives like this are really going to be important moving forward.
Well, yeah, just so that people know, if they're looking to, you said the future business owners, people who are starting businesses, that this is somewhere or a space that they can play in, so to speak. And it's not like, this exclusive club, because you're right, that has to continually evolve. Just like at some point the current majority of business owners was probably a minority, in the way they thought from the generation before them. And so it's a constant thing. So I think just being aware of it, and making sure that there's time and space dedicated to it, and that it's there, not something that is, a requirement or by any means telling people how to run their businesses or how to think. It's just that there are people out there who can benefit from it. So why not?
Totally. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to going over to the U.N.I.T.E Together booth at Printing United, and seeing what it's all about. And the educational sessions sound awesome. So I hope I get to sit in on some of that. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope to have you back on a future episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ashley. Anytime. And we'll see you in October.
Make sure you stay tuned, because we will be talking with Ross in just a few short moments.
Want to join the entire printing industry in Vegas? Printing United Expo, taking place October 19th to the 21st, will span 2 halls of the Las Vegas Convention Center, encompassing 1 million gross square feet of booth space, all focused on print and supporting the industry. If you're looking for new equipment, sourcing blanks, networking, or education, Printing United Expo has you covered. Immerse yourself in everything the decorated apparel community has to offer, from traditional screen and emerging digital print technologies to the latest blank and roll fabric substrates on the market. Grab your team and explore aisles and aisles stacked with printing equipment, solutions, trends, and suppliers ready to show you the latest and greatest in the industry. Save the date and head to printingunited.com to register today.
So, hey, Ross, thank you so much for joining us today on the Impressions Xchange podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Great, great. You're the president of ROQ, and the U.N.I.T.E Together initiative was born out of ROQ's mission to spread diversity, inclusion, and equality messages within the apparel industry. So can you tell me a little bit about U.N.I.T Together, what it is, how it came to be?
Absolutely. So I'll start with what it started out as and kind of evolve that into what it is today. So back when we started ROQ US about 3 years ago, we saw a real lack of diversity within this industry. It actually was kind of born out of me coming from the industry as a printer years ago. And there were a lot of walls up, a lot of silos in the industry. And it all seemed to be very one-dimensional, I guess I could say. And as we started the company, I started to see a lot of female entrepreneurs getting into the space, and it was really exciting. And we started a movement that simply was just called Women ROQ, and it really was to highlight female entrepreneurs in the space, provide a closed Facebook group, and really just uplift that. We started to do the Women in Print Awards and be the sole sponsor of that. So got really into that side of inclusion, specifically with female entrepreneurs, and it kind of evolved and turned into ROQ Together from there, which was all about diversity, equity, inclusion in its whole, and really educating ourselves on what that meant as a company. So we read books together as a business. It really was about our team coming together and saying, who is ROQ? How are we, upholding these values, and how are we spending our money? How are we hiring, et cetera? And so it kind of just spearheaded into a movement from there. And I would talk to some other folks in the industry about it and what we were doing, and that got some excitement. People started to ask, well, how can I get involved? And we got more and more people involved in ROQ Together, and then found that obviously tying a diversity, equity, and inclusion movement to one brand is not going to get involvement. A lot of competition in this industry, et cetera, right? And U.N.I.T Together was born out of that ROQ Together movement. So essentially it's a platform now. It's a platform that has a board. That board is representative of a diverse group of people from a bunch of different parts of our industry. So, Printing United's involved on that board, and Impressions is involved on that board. We've got screen printers involved on that board, digital printers, female-owned companies, just a big diverse group of people that basically sit on this board. And our goal is really to eventually form it into its own alliance, its own thing that's outside of our walls. And we've maintained ROQ Together ourselves. So basically we're still working on ourselves internally, but wanted to create a platform to really start to spread the love in the industry. And it really started out as shows. Interestingly enough, we had a podcast when we first started ROQ Together, and the number one thing we heard was that people didn't feel included when they were going to events. And so, you'd get this standard, female entrepreneur going into some booth, and, some salesperson saying, "Oh, where's your husband?" Kind of thing when they walk up, and they may not even have a husband, or, whatever the case may have been, right? And so, and there was a lot of other folks feeling left out of industry events. I mean, it was just a really eye-opening podcast that we had with a really diverse group of people. And so a lot of the work that we're doing now is bringing U.N.I.T Together booths into all the shows nationwide, giving people a place to talk about their messages, giving other entrepreneurs that are involved in U.N.I.T Together a voice and a place to talk about what they're doing. And it's been really exciting to see it sort of evolve over the last almost 3 years and turn into what it is today.
Incredible, incredible. And I love some of the things that you mentioned, the books, and I saw online documentaries, and it's more than just, a lot of companies will sometimes put, DE&I initiatives in their mission statement, but it sounds like this is like the way to actually walk the walk, and make it part of, the conversation and bringing awareness to these issues. I think that's just great.
Yeah, it starts with the individual. And if, our people individually are willing to learn and willing to understand, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a hard pill to swallow. I started on this journey, as one of those people that said, well, I see everyone equally. And because I felt that way. Well, in learning and reading, it's like, Ross, that while in your own mind, you may be doing things a certain way and holding those values true, saying it just really doesn't mean anything. How do you actually show it? And it's been a lot of self-discovery, I think, for everyone that's been involved. And it's really changed the fabric of the way that we think about our business, which is just, it's great. We're making changes in a lot of people's lives, and it's been a phenomenal, mission to have in our business.
So something you mentioned was that this kind of came about from some conversations where women in particular were feeling, kind of outsiders within the industry. So it's not a coincidence that I wanted to speak with you during the month of June, because June is Pride Month. And I know that, part of the Unite Together initiative also includes the LGBTQIA plus community, which oftentimes is overlooked. So can you talk about some of the ways in which Unite Together is, partnering with or trying to amplify those voices?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got in Unite Together, Mike Kahn is one of the people that's involved in our board. He is an LGBTQ run business who's actually part of, he speaks way better to this than I do, but they're actually part of an organization where their business is, where he employs a certain amount of the LGBTQ community. I mean, he himself is part of it. We went to Pride, the Pride Parade with them last year in New York, which was fantastic. And we were just kind of spreading the message through T-shirts at that venue. This year we've been reading a book, actually have it right here, which is called Allies at Work. I know we're not filming this, but it's creating a lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender inclusive work environment. So our team is going through this from a ROQ perspective, and we meet once every 2 weeks, go through what we've learned, how are we practicing that in our own business. And so every time the months change and we're recognizing something different, we try to put that together focus, or that Unite Together focus on what's current, and learn about it in the moment, to better ourselves and to better the community around us. But I think the goal of Unite is to have representation across all, ethnicities, sexual orientation, who knows how deep that can go, right? Because it really is about the whole. So we're excited to see more and more people join, more and more people get involved that are representative of all these different, underserved communities of people.
And you just earlier mentioned that part of the board, there are people on the board from all different areas in the printing industry. And so something that I find interesting, I'm not as in tune with the apparel side of things. I'm more in the commercial and wide format and packaging side of the industry a lot of the time. And diversity and inclusion is something we're, with our brands, we're trying to start, addressing more, because it is an issue, I think, in a lot of industries. But what would be your advice to people in the printing industry in particular, not any one segment, on how to get involved with, and Unite Together, or how to get involved with other DE&I initiatives?
I think the first step is recognizing it's a problem. I think a lot of people don't take that first step. And if you don't take the first step of recognizing that it's an issue, you're just placating a bunch of people, which isn't helping solve a problem. You've got to be willing to recognize it's an issue, understand where you sit personally on that issue, and then what can you do within your business to actually make change. Because I mean, anyone can join Unite Together. You go to unitetogether.us, you take a pledge, and that's basically saying, hey, I want to live these values and I want to bring them into the walls of my workplace. And they could put a badge up on their website and feel very proud about it, but if they're not actually doing anything about it, it's not helping make change, right? So I think you've got to your culture has to rally around it. So the people that want to get involved, it's the self-identification, it's the understanding, I want to bring this into my business. And then it's, how can my team support this? And when we brought this up, I mean, there was just a resounding huge group of people that work with us in ROQ that were like, oh my gosh, I want to be involved. And I mean, we meet and they're excited and we're talking about issues and people are coming up with ideas on, different fundraisers, different organizations we can get involved with. And again, I think that the biggest thing is teaching yourself. I think that's the problem, is we're just all very uneducated. And the more educated people are on the issue, the more change is just going to inherently happen. It really is just a process of education. And, it was met with not the greatest response publicly. I mean, when we went out with this, we got some pretty nasty comments on social from people. We had people threaten to never buy things from us again. I mean, it was, but you know what? We stood tall as a business. We responded with love and, let people do what they're going to do. The best thing that we can do is respond with love and know that we're doing the right thing. And I hope that we can get more and more people that have booths at these trade shows get involved, show that they're going to be that business that welcomes everyone into their space, that invites everyone to their party, that lets everyone be involved in what we're doing. And the more of that we can spread throughout the industry publicly, the more change is going to be made.
Yeah. And I think, not just the fact that supporting initiatives like this, it's good. It's a good thing. It makes you feel good. It's a good for everybody. But it also, we have an issue with attracting and retaining talent. And if you're excluding people or not, proving that you're inclusive and that you want to reach out to marginalized communities, I mean, you're just like, kicking yourself or shooting yourself in the foot, because I mean, there are so many people out there who could be great assets to our industry, but they just, don't feel like they're being spoken to. So I think this is just a great initiative.
I think too, when your current team members or the people that you do have on board can be a part of something bigger than themselves, when you're talking about retention, you have these meetings in the middle of the day where people can take focus off of the grind. They get out of it for a minute. They remember humanity. They get to smile. They get to be a part of something special. And, it changes the culture. And I think a lot of folks in our industry don't pay attention to the culture. It's not, you're not going to make money without people. People drive business and culture drives people. And, having movements like this and embracing it and bringing it into your walls is a big part of, why we live as human beings. We like to help, we like to make change. And, more and more, people are looking for purpose in their work. It's not just work. They want to know that the company is doing something to give back to a community, that's embracing culture, that's embracing diversity, that's embracing the environment, right? And that is the new workforce. And the people that can't wrap their heads around that and learn what they need to learn to bring it into their businesses, I'm not going to say that they're going to fail, because that's a really big statement, but they're not going to be as successful as they could be otherwise.
Totally agreed. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would want to say about Unite Together or D&I initiatives in general?
I mean, my biggest thing to tell people is come get involved. Email me, rhunter@roq.us. Reach out to anyone at the shows, reach out to Printing United. They've got our information, they're involved. Come to our booths at the show, talk to people. And just remember, it takes all of us, right, to make this industry great. And I think we just need more people to come together and understand what Unite Together is trying to do and the change that that's going to make, long term for all of the future printers that are getting into the industry. And just be involved. That's the biggest thing. Take that step.
I think that's perfect advice. And for our listeners, I will include links to Ross's contact information, as well as Unite Together and the Expo. Thank you again, Ross, so much for taking time to speak with us today.
Thank you guys for being a part of this. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
I want to give a special shout out to Josh and Ross for joining me on today's episode. And thank you to all of you, our listeners. Stay tuned for the next episode of Impressions Xchange podcast.